They thought her silence was weakness. They thought her tears were proof of instability. Daniel Hartwell stood in family court, confident and composed, claiming his wife was too mentally fragile to care for their children. He had documentation. He had witnesses. He had a story so carefully constructed it looked like truth. What he didn't have was the recorder his wife had been carrying for 7 years. And what he definitely didn't know was that her therapist wasn't just listening. She was documenting everything. The courtroom was cold. Not in temperature but in atmosphere. It was one of those sterile family courtrooms in downtown Seattle where marriages go to die and children become pawns. Daniel Hartwell sat at the plaintiff's table in a tailored navy suit, looking every inch the concerned father. His lawyer, a sharp woman named Victoria Cross, shuffled papers with practiced efficiency. They were going for full custody of Emma, age 9, and Noah, age 6. Across the aisle sat Rachel Hartwell, 34 years old, thin in a way that spoke of missed meals and sleepless nights. Her hands trembled slightly as she gripped a pen. Her lawyer, a public defender named Tom Brennan, looked exhausted and underprepared. Judge Catherine Morrison presided. She was in her late 50s, gray hair pulled into a severe bun, reading glasses perched on her nose. She'd seen 1,000 custody battles. This one looked straightforward. "Miss Cross," the judge said, "present your case." Victoria Cross stood with the confidence of someone who'd never lost. "Your Honor, my client, Mr. Daniel Hartwell, is seeking full custody of his 2 minor children based on the mental instability of their mother, Mrs. Rachel Hartwell. Over the past 3 years, Mrs. Hartwell has exhibited erratic behavior, emotional outbursts, and an inability to maintain consistent care for the children." Rachel stared at the table. She didn't react. Couldn't react. That's what they'd told her to do. Don't show emotion. It'll be used against you. "Mrs. Hartwell has been in therapy for the past 7 years, Victoria continued. She has been prescribed multiple psychiatric medications for anxiety, depression, and what her own medical records describe as acute stress responses. Victoria placed a stack of documents on the judge's bench. These are her psychiatric records, provided voluntarily by Mr. Hartwell as part of discovery. They paint a picture of a woman who is unstable, Your Honor. A woman who, despite our sympathy for her struggles, is simply not fit to care for children. Judge Morrison flipped through the pages. "These are sealed medical records. How did you obtain them?" "Mrs. Hartwell signed a release," Victoria said smoothly. 3 years ago, when she and Mr. Hartwell were attempting reconciliation, she consented to shared medical transparency. Rachel's lawyer stood up. "Your Honor, my client was coerced into signing that release. She was told it was for marriage counseling purposes, not to be weaponized in court." "Noted," Judge Morrison said. "But the signature is valid. Continue, Ms. Cross." Victoria smiled. "Your Honor, we also have testimony from Mr. Hartwell regarding specific incidents. Mrs. Hartwell once locked herself in the bathroom for 6 hours, refusing to come out. She has forgotten to pick up the children from school on multiple occasions. She has been found crying uncontrollably in her car in public parking lots." Rachel closed her eyes. Every word was true. And every word was missing context. The bathroom incident? That was the day Daniel had thrown a glass at her head and she'd hidden until he left. The missed pickups? That was when Daniel had taken her car keys and she'd had to walk 3 miles to get them. The crying in parking lots? That was when she'd finally gathered the courage to call a lawyer but didn't know how to pay for one. "We asked the court to grant Mr. Hartwell full physical and legal custody," Victoria concluded, "with supervised visitation for Mrs. Hartwell until she can demonstrate sustained mental stability." Judge Morrison looked at Rachel. "Mrs. Hartwell, do you have any response?" Tom Brennan stood up. He looked nervous. "Your Honor, we'd like to call a witness. Dr. Miriam Sato, Mrs. Hartwell's psychiatrist." Victoria Cross frowned. "Objection, Your Honor. Doctor-patient privilege prevents Dr. Sato from testifying about the specifics of Mrs. Hartwell's treatment." "Mrs. Hartwell has waived privilege for the purpose of this hearing," Tom said quickly. "We have the signed release." Judge Morrison raised an eyebrow. "Proceed." Dr. Miriam Sato walked into the courtroom like she owned it. She was in her 50s, with silver-streaked black hair and an air of unshakable calm. She'd been a psychiatrist for 27 years. She'd testified in court before. But never like this. She was sworn in and took the witness stand. Tom Brennan approached. "Dr. Sato, how long have you been treating Mrs. Hartwell?" 7 years, Dr. Sato said. Her voice was steady, clear. "And in your professional opinion, Is Mrs. Hartwell mentally unfit to care for her children? Dr. Sato looked directly at the judge. Absolutely not. A murmur went through the courtroom. Daniel shifted in his seat. Can you elaborate? Tom asked. Mrs. Hartwell came to me 7 years ago suffering from what I diagnosed as complex PTSD. Not from a chemical imbalance. Not from inherent mental illness. From sustained psychological and physical abuse. Victoria Cross shot to her feet. Objection. Dr. Sato is making unsubstantiated accusations. I'm making documented observations, Dr. Sato interrupted calmly. Mrs. Hartwell didn't just talk to me. She recorded. The courtroom went silent. Judge Morrison leaned forward. Recorded what? Dr. Sato reached into her bag and pulled out a small digital recorder. With my guidance and for her own safety, Mrs. Hartwell began documenting her interactions with her husband. She brought these recordings to our sessions. Over 7 years, we accumulated over 300 hours of audio. Daniel's face went white. Your Honor, Dr. Sato continued, these recordings document a pattern of verbal abuse, gaslighting, financial control, and threats. They also document something else. They document Mr. Hartwell deliberately triggering his wife's trauma responses and then using those responses as evidence of her instability. Victoria was on her feet. Your Honor, this is... I'd like to hear a sample, Judge Morrison said, cutting her off. Dr. Sato connected the recorder to the courtroom's audio system. She pressed play. Daniel's voice filled the room. Come. Measured. Rachel, you're being hysterical again. This is why no one believes you. You sound crazy. Rachel's voice shaking. You just told me I'm a terrible mother. You said the kids would be better off without me. Daniel, I didn't say that. You're imagining things. You always do this. This is why you need help. Rachel crying, I'm not imagining it. You said it 5 minutes ago. Daniel, see? You can't even keep track of reality. How are you supposed to take care of children when you can't even take care of yourself? The recording stopped. The silence in the courtroom was deafening. Judge Morrison's face was stone. Continue, Dr. Sato. Dr. Sato pressed play again. Another recording. Daniel's voice, this time angry. If you try to leave me, Rachel, I'll make sure everyone knows you're insane. I'll take the kids. I'll take the house. I'll take everything. And no judge will believe a mentally ill woman over a respected businessman. Dr. Sato stopped the playback. She looked at Daniel. Mr. Hartwell weaponized his wife's mental health treatment. He isolated her from friends and family. He controlled her finances. He told her repeatedly that she was crazy, that she was unfit, that no one would believe her. And then he used her anxiety and depression, conditions he deliberately caused, as evidence that she was unfit. Victoria Cross was scrambling. Your Honor, these recordings were made without Mr. Hartwell's consent. They're inadmissible. Washington is a one-party consent state, Judge Morrison said coldly. If Mrs. Hartwell was part of the conversation, the recordings are legal. Continue, Dr. Sato. I have 300 hours, Your Honor, Dr. Sato said. I've compiled a report. But what I want the court to understand is this. Rachel Hartwell is not mentally ill in the way Mr. Hartwell is suggesting. She's a trauma survivor. And the person who caused that trauma is sitting 10 feet away from her, asking this court to give him complete control over their children. Daniel finally spoke. His voice was tight. She's lying. Those recordings are edited. Taken out of context. Dr. Sato smiled. It wasn't kind. I have the full unedited files. Time-stamped. Authenticated by a forensic audio expert. Would you like me to play more? Judge Morrison held up her hand. That won't be necessary. Mr. Hartwell, stand up. Daniel stood slowly. He looked like a man watching his life collapse in real time. Mr. Hartwell, Judge Morrison said, her voice like ice, I've been on this bench for 19 years. I've seen manipulators. I've seen abusers. But I have rarely seen someone weaponize the legal system and mental health system as deliberately as you have. She picked up the stack of Rachel's medical records. You didn't provide these records to help your case. You provided them to humiliate your wife. To make her look weak. To make her look unfit. Judge Morrison turned to Rachel. Mrs. Hartwell, I'm sorry this court almost failed you. Rachel looked up, tears streaming down her face. Custody is awarded to Mrs. Rachel Hartwell. Full physical and legal custody. Mr. Hartwell, you are granted supervised visitation only. 2 hours per week. In a facility. With a court-appointed monitor. Daniel's lawyer tried to object. The judge silenced her with a look. Furthermore, Judge Morrison continued, I am referring this case to the District Attorney's Office for potential charges of domestic abuse, coercive control, and perjury. Mr. Hartwell, you came into this court and lied under oath. You attempted to use your wife's trauma as a weapon. That ends today. She banged the gavel. The sound echoed like a gunshot. Daniel walked out of the courthouse alone. No children. No wife. No victory. His lawyer had abandoned him the moment the judge mentioned perjury charges. Victoria Cross wanted nothing to do with a case that made her look complicit. Rachel stood on the courthouse steps, flanked by Dr. Sato and Tom Brennan. The afternoon sun was warm on her face. For the first time in 7 years, she felt like she could breathe. What happens now? Rachel asked. Now, Dr. Sato said gently, you heal. Really heal. Not just survive. 2 years later, Rachel had rebuilt her life. She worked as a teacher. She had a small house with a garden. Emma and Noah were thriving, laughing, free. Daniel had lost more than custody. The criminal case had gone forward. He'd been convicted of coercive control and served 6 months. His business had collapsed. His reputation was destroyed. But Rachel didn't think about him anymore. She'd spent 7 years living in fear of a man who convinced her she was broken. Dr. Sato had helped her see the truth. She was never broken. She was bent by cruelty. And bent things can straighten. The lesson. Daniel Hartwell thought he could rewrite reality. He thought if he said something enough times, if he documented it, medicalized it, presented it in court, it would become true. But truth doesn't live in paperwork. It lives in evidence. In recordings. In the voices of those brave enough to document their pain. Rachel didn't just survive her abuse. She archived it. And when the moment came, that archive became her salvation. This story isn't just about one woman's victory. It's about every person who's been told they're too sensitive, too emotional, too broken by the very person breaking them. You're not crazy. You're not unfit. You're not imagining it. And if you're documenting it, like Rachel did, you're building the case that will one day set you free. If this story spoke to you, please take a moment to like this video. It helps us reach others who need to hear that their reality is valid. Share this with someone who's been gaslit, silenced, or told they're the problem. And subscribe for more stories where truth wins and the manipulators lose. Until next time, remember, your voice matters. Your truth matters. And no one gets to rewrite your reality. Justice always finds a way.